Hey everyone, I'm Nishagni and this is Nishagni Tarot and welcome to another episode of a deck walkthrough. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago I had done a deck walkthrough, my very first walkthrough of the Harmony Tarot, and you can find it on my posts if you would like to take a look at it. So today, not only do I have a new look going on, I wanted to take you through a deck which is something which I absolutely love and which is something very special to me. And it is a oracle deck and a deck that not a lot of people know about and not a lot of people use. And this deck is the Yogini Oracle. So before I go into the actual walkthrough, I thought I'd give you some context about who the Yoginis are, what tradition they come from, and what the Yogini cult is all about. So I've actually made tons of notes over here so I don't miss out on any of the important points. So don't mind me if I keep looking down occasionally. Okay. So the Yoginis are practitioners who come from the tradition of Tantra, which is a component of Hinduism. Now, Tantra is actually a combination or rather a Sanskrit word, which is a combination of two words, which one is Tanot and the other is Rayati. So Tanot means expansion and Rayati means liberation. So Tanot Rayati becomes Tantra. So this essentially Tantra is a philosophy of the expansion of our consciousness and the liberation of our souls through enlightenment and the expansion of our consciousness. So essentially Tantra is all about growing philosophically and understanding the mysteries of the universe. Now if you look at popular culture and today the way Tantra is described, you would see that Tantra is mostly spoken of in terms of Kundalini, sex, and intimacy, and basically all the sexual parts of any spiritual practice is kind of equated with Tantra. But the truth is, sex is just a single facet of Tantra and not Tantra as a whole. And Tantra also involves discourses because the original philosophy behind the tradition of Tantra was a dialogue between gods and goddesses as they discuss the philosophical underpinnings of Hinduism. So that is the basic mythos, you could call it, of how Tantra originated. So gods and goddesses would have a discussion. Gods would question the goddesses about a particular section of philosophy, and the goddesses would answer. Similarly, the goddesses would question the gods, and the gods would answer from their perspective. So the whole tradition of Tantra originally built up from this particular tradition. Now, so when you look at Tantra's definition from this viewpoint, it is actually a culture of complete esoteric and spiritual aspects of Hinduism, devoid of the conventional religious rituals. So it's all about discussions, it's all about philosophical growth, generating new ideas, and so on. When we come to Yoginis are people who practice and who are adept at the culture of Tantra. And if you look at Tantra, it has Hindu origins, but it predates Hinduism in terms that the whole Tantra religion or the Tantra cult originated from small villages and tribes that were populating India almost 25,000 to 20,000 BC, from that era. The earliest evidence of Tantra comes from the worship of the goddess Shakti. Now, goddess Shakti is essentially the primordial essence of the entire universe. She is what creates the entire universe. She is universe itself. She is the primordial energy. And she is the creative force and the destructive force that has put the universe in place, which has created the stars, the planets, the earth, people, animals, and she is the force which will destroy the world and start the world all over again. And according to Tantra and according to ancient Hindu scriptures, goddess Shakti is the power which existed before even the divinities came into being. So she was like the spark, she was the first ever divine energy or source, as many of us call the creator of the entire universe. So the yoginis are considered to not only be the devotees of goddess Shakti, but yoginis are considered to be manifestations or parts of the goddess Shakti herself. And the earliest evidence of worship of goddess Shakti was in, as I mentioned, almost 25,000 to 20,000 BC, around that period, in the Son River Valley, which was located in the Upper Paleolithic era. And the actual stone's name, which consists of the image of goddess Shakti and one of the earliest evidences of the yogini tradition, was called as the Bagor stone. So it's a very, very old tradition, and it started out in the form of tribal worship. So tribes in India, small villages, they would worship goddess Shakti's various manifestations as protectors of the village, as healers, as midwives who helped deliver babies and ensure that the pregnant mother would survive after birth. There would be people who would nurse the dying and allow them to, or rather facilitate their movement from the land of the living to the land of the dead. So they were considered to be the attendants and priestesses of goddess Shakti herself and the gateway to commune with the goddess. So the yoginis played a huge role in the whole ancient Hindu and pre-Hindu traditions. But as and when the worship of yoginis became more prevalent, the culture of yogini and the culture of Tantra as a whole became ingrained or absorbed into mainstream Hinduism. So today, if you go to certain places like West Bengal or Orissa, you will see lot of temples dedicated to the yoginis and to the worship of Tantra. And you'll see people going there today to make offerings to the various yoginis, whether it is to get a job or to get married or to get pregnant, overcome any illnesses. So they have played a huge role in the culture of India. Now, when it comes to yoginis, just a fun fact. So the yogini temples I was mentioning about, they are always kept, the yogini sculptures are made in stone and they are kept open to the environment. So there is no roof, there is no door, there is absolutely nothing covering them. And this is mainly because since yoginis are considered manifestations of goddess Shakti, they are Prakriti themselves. Prakriti is Sanskrit word for nature. So they are Mother Nature themselves. They are the universe themselves. And the belief is that by keeping the yogini sculptures out in the open without any covering, you are allowing for the seamless merging between the natural elements and the divine elements. And we the people can partake of this amazing energy in our daily lives. So that's the theory of the yogini temples. So speaking of the yoginis, the yogini oracle in particular, the oracle deck was created by a very famous Swiss author, Stella Dupuy. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing the author's name correctly, so I apologize for that. So Stella visited India, and when the author visited India, she was very fascinated by the culture of yoginis, and she spent a very long time staying in India, studying the culture of Tantra, studying the yogini culture, the yogini cult, and becoming sort of like gaining a mastery over the yogini traditions. And she created this deck to celebrate the culture of Tantra, the culture of yoginis, and to help the rest of us also find a way to access the divine wisdom of the yoginis. Now, when it comes to the Yogini Oracle, the deck comes in this particular box. It's a pretty sturdy box, and it's very beautifully made. The funny thing is, when I found out about this deck, it was just by fluke. I had read a newspaper article, and there was not a lot of information mentioned about the Oracle deck itself or the creator. And when I looked online on Amazon, there were just about maybe 2 to 3 people who had reviewed this deck. And I just bought it on blind faith, hoping that the deck and the cards and everything would be great. And I was just, really surprised with the amazing quality that this deck has. So this box is really sturdy. You don't really need a bag or anything if you're willing to give it the space to have this deck. It's very beautifully made. It opens like a flap box like this. And this is where the deck, the cards and the guidebook are placed. The cards had come shrink wrapped in thick plastic, so to make sure that there was nothing that could damage them. So that was very amazing. And this is the guidebook. Again, it matches the cover of the box. And this is one of the yoginis here. You get some information about the deck over here. And the pages are actually like your glossy magazine pages, like if you bought a Vogue or whatever, the glossy magazine pages. It's very thick, very well made. Now about the guidebook, I do have some thoughts and that I will share them with you right now. This is going to be a long video, so grab some coffee or tea or a wine or whatever and strap in. Okay, so the Oracle deck itself is all right. You have some information about the origin of the Yogini the tradition, the Tantra tradition. Stella doesn't really go too much into the kind of information that I have provided, just prior to this, but she focuses a lot on the myths associated with the Yogini tradition. And one of the core myths that is associated with the Yogini tradition is that of Matsyendranath. Now, the word Matsya in Sanskrit means fish. So there are basically 3 theories or 3 myths that surround the Tantra tradition and the Yogini tradition. One is that Matsyendranath was a manifestation of God Shiva or Maheshwara himself, and being a god, he had access to the divine knowledge of goddess Shakti, and he was reborn on the world as Matsyendranath, and he started the Yogini cult. So that's one theory. The second theory is that Matsyendranath was a fisherman whose prowess at fishing really made the god Shiva very happy, and therefore as a boon the god Shiva granted Matsyendranath with the knowledge of the universe, which Matsyendranath took and started the Yogini cult. And finally, there's the third myth which Stella has chosen to represent in the Yogini Oracle. And that is basically, so when Matsyendranath was born, he was born under a very inauspicious time in the Hindu Vedic astrological calendar. So because he was born in an inauspicious time, his family feared that his birth would bring curses to them or to the family, and therefore decided to kill the baby and dump the newborn baby in the sea. And while the baby was drowning, a large fish came and swallowed the baby whole. And Matsyendranath found himself lodged in the womb of the fish. Now this fish was a divine fish, and because it was a divine fish, it would interact closely with all the divine underwater creatures. And it was by being in the womb of this fish that Matsyendranath, as a baby, overheard all the divine knowledge from the creatures underwater. And one day, Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati were flying in the sky, or they were going somewhere, and Goddess Parvati wanted a fish. And so when Shiva caught a fish and cut the belly of the fish open, Matsyendranath emerged as a fully grown man. And when he came out, he brought with him the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of goddess Shakti with him. And when he recited all this knowledge to God Shiva, the god was extremely happy, and he blessed Matsyendranath with a long life, so he could take the messages of goddess Shakti out into the world and spread the message of the goddess to everyone. So that is the story that Stella has mentioned over here. So you get a small chunk of that over here. And after that, you pretty much go directly into the different yoginis. So one thing about the yoginis is that traditionally it is considered there are 64 yoginis. Although there are, if you look at various places around India and some places in Nepal and Bhutan and other South Asian countries where Tantra is practiced, you will notice that there are more manifestations of yoginis which resemble each other a lot. So overall there are a lot more, but the divine number of true number of yoginis is considered to be 64, and therefore in the Yogini Oracle deck you have 64 Yogini Oracle cards. Now in this particular deck, what you see over here is that, so you get a full page color illustration of the Yogini card, and right next to it you get some description. So the first part is the description of who the Yogini is and the symbols that she holds. So if she holds, for example, over here, this Yogini has sort of a cup or a diya in her hand. So we look at the different symbols present on this Yogini's body, what symbols or what weapons she's holding. So this first set of information talks of the Yogini and the symbolism of the Yogini in Tantra culture. Next you have what is known as sadhana, which is practice, where you focus on how to use the power of the Yogini, how to channel the power of the Yogini and manifest her energy in your life. Now consider this to be some like how you would do goddess practice. Now if you have a goddess oracle deck, let's say you take out Aphrodite for the month, and as you do your practice, your meditations, your visualizations, your tarot practice, your witchcraft practice, whatever it is, you focus on channeling the energy of Aphrodite in your life and in your practice. Similarly, the sadhana here offers you tips and strategies, a couple of exercises over here on how you can manifest the energy of this particular Yogini in your life. So this is essentially a goddess oracle deck, except that it is not a mainstream goddess oracle deck, it's a Yogini oracle deck. Now one thing which I liked about this guidebook was the sadhana practice. So for a lot of us, if we don't know what to do with the power of that particular Yogini, we get at least the starting point on how to explore her energy. But what I didn't, or rather I would say what could have been better, is that Stella could have provided some more information about the cultural aspects of the Yoginis themselves. So you could consider this to be a practical guidebook, but without the theory, it becomes sort of difficult for us to truly understand the essence of the Yogini. I mean, understanding the symbols that she bears, the weapons that she uses is one thing, but how do you cohesively bring them together? So that is something that is missing in this book. So which is why my recommendation is that you pick up this book as well. So this is the 64 Yoginis book by Dr. Anamika Roy. So Dr. Anamika Roy is an associate professor of the Department of Ancient History, Culture and Archaeology at the University of Allahabad in India. So Dr. Anamika Roy is one of the foremost specialists who has expert knowledge about the Yogini culture, about Tantra culture. And if my research is correct, I think Stella Dupuy did consult Dr. Anamika Roy while creating the Yogini Oracle deck and the Yogini Oracle guidebook. So a lot of the information based on whatever I have read about the creation of this deck, I think it does stem a lot from this book and from a lot of Dr. Anamika Roy's lectures on the Yogini and the Tantra traditions. So I would personally recommend that you pick up this book as well if you are interested in exploring the Yogini Oracle deck. So this book has a lot of information. So first off, let me say that one of the key differences that you would notice between this book and the Yogini Oracle Guidebook is that this book not only covers the 64 key yoginis, but she covers overall 188 yoginis. So not only do you get the first 64, you get so many other types of regional yoginis that you can explore who are different facets of the main 64 yoginis. So overall you have 108 yoginis to explore over here, which is amazing. And it's a pretty chunky book. I mean, look at it, right? And you also have a lot of information about, the history of the yogini, the history of Tantra. In fact, a lot of the initial information that I gave you, I did learn from this as well. So this book really goes into depth about the whole yogini culture. So I would 100% recommend that you pick up this book, study this book along with this book. So use this as your theoretical book and use this as your practical book while you're working with the yogini cards. Okay, so now to the main walkthrough part. So first off, let's look at the cardstock. So the cardstock is amazing. So look at the back, it's so beautiful. And this is the fish I was talking to you about, Matsyendranath. Matsya means fish in Sanskrit. So that's how she has represented the back, which is absolutely beautiful. And the card is very thick. I mean, I was actually very surprised. Like I mentioned, there were no reviews, like very few reviews for me to rely on. And I wasn't really sure how the quality was going to be, but this is absolutely stunning. And it's a pretty thick card. I don't know if this is visible, I'm not really sure. Anyways, I would, if you have the Yogic Path Oracle by Sahara Rose, then I think it kind of matches that particular cardstock quality. It's really thick. And yeah. Right, so now we'll go into the actual cards and I'll just show you the cards. So the Yogini Oracle deck is 64 plus 1, which I forgot to mention. And that is because the first card is the Bhairava. So according to Tantra tradition, the yoginis are governed by, or rather they have, I think governed is a good word, by a god called Bhairava, who is considered to be a manifestation of God Shiva. So if you have studied or rather know something about Hindu philosophy, you will know that Shiva and Shakti sort of go hand in hand. So it makes sense to see that the god Bhairava is also included in the Yogini tradition. And there is a lot of information about Bhairava both in the 64 Yoginis book and the guidebook by Stella. And now we'll go one by one. This is the first card. So you can see over here that you have the number 1 written over here to indicate that which yogini this is, along with the name of the yogini. You have a large picture of the yogini and some white space as well. I particularly found the white space useful because a lot of these cards are very heavy on imagery and they are very colorful. So the white space sort of gives you a cooling effect on the eyes and doesn't overwhelm you too much. So you can focus on the details and you can also take a break when you want to. As you can see, there are a lot of different poses. I mean, and different creatures also, you could say. I mean, in fact, I think the yoginis are, since they are manifestations of nature, you'll see a lot of representation of animals, plants over here, like for example, the crocodile over here. And yes, there is nudity in this deck. I honestly don't know what I feel about it because my studies haven't progressed too deeply in the yogini culture yet, so I wouldn't be able to give you a unbiased opinion. But yes, the Tantra tradition does focus on liberation, and that just doesn't mean mental liberation, but it's also physical liberation. It's basically about allowing yourself to free yourself of the shackles, whether it is your personally put on yourself or the societal shackles that you have, and overcoming those. There's a lot to see in these cards. For example, this person over here. And the expression. So not all the yoginis are, they have a positive expression, they don't smile like for this one. And there's a reason for it because, like I mentioned, so the yoginis in the traditional village and tribal landscape, they functioned as protectors, healers. Some of them were called upon when the community wanted to take revenge on somebody else. So you have different manifestations of the yoginis. So you'll see them you see these manifestations in the way they are, their expressions, facial expressions are put in, the body, the coloring that the body has, if it's, very violently red versus just green or blue. So all these things do play a huge role. Which is another thing I feel is missing in the guidebook, to be honest. I'm not trying to diss on the guidebook, it's just that I wish there was a lot more information, because for someone who doesn't have any idea about the yoginis, this becomes a very difficult deck to work with. Because I'll be honest, there isn't a lot of information you can find online about yoginis as well. You have to really dig deep for this information. Or rather for authentic information. I think that's a better way to phrase it. And yes, do I recommend this deck for children? Maybe not. I mean, I would say because of, first off, there's nudity, and second, there is a lot of, for example, see, this is an animal-headed yogini. So it might be something that some children may not be comfortable with. Maybe someone who's very sensitive to imagery, they may not be comfortable with. And in some of the previous cards, we did see how there were instances of decapitations, or the yoginis holding a blood-soaked organ and things like that. So those may be triggering for some people. So I would say that, if you should consider all these before you purchase this deck. But I love the, the attention to detail. So this is supposed to be, I think, a cheetah or something. So the goddess has those markings. And this is exactly what I was talking to you about. As you can see. The yoginis are manifestations of goddess Shakti, who is nature, who created nature and is nature and the universe herself. So it makes sense to see the amalgamation of natural creatures and natural beings into the yoginis as well. And that brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about, is about how if you look at the Hindu tradition apart from, as a whole, over the millennia, it is actually a pagan tradition which focuses a lot on nature worship. So the gods in the Hindu, I don't know if I could call it pantheon, because pantheon is predominantly Greek. They're all manifestations of gods. Look, this looks like a lot like Ganesha. Oh, this is gorgeous. This is one of my most favorite cards. This looks so beautiful. I don't know if you can see it in the correct lighting. So a lot of gods are, like for example, we have a sun god, which is basically representation of the sun. We have a moon god. Lord Ganesha is an elephant. We have a god for thunder, for the oceans, fire. And just for me, that was one of the reasons why I found that, calling myself more pagan, it was something that was really close to home. Practicing witchcraft was very close to home, because witchcraft is also paganism. And I continue to worship nature, and this deck sort of fits in both ways, nature worship and the connection to my Hindu roots. So pretty happy about this one. So while talking about this, I'm sure some of you may have questions about, okay, I'm not a practicing Hindu, I'm a Christian, I'm a Zoroastrian, or I'm Muslim, can I practice using these cards? You can. Essentially, these cards are more about archetypes than they are about goddesses themselves. So, like I mentioned, when you're using a goddess oracle deck, you would be channeling the energy and the spirit that the goddess represents rather than the goddess herself. So, you can do the same thing with these cards. And again, since these are manifestations of nature, you could even infuse them into your practice if you're trying to infuse some of the elements that you see in nature. So, for example, there are a lot of myths about how turtles or tortoises, in, let's say, Hawaiian culture as well, and about their perseverance, about their ability to hold on to a lot of, or rather bear the struggle, their ability, slow and steady wins the race, so that kind of a thing. So if you have a Yogini card with a turtle imagery on it, you could channel that imagery into your practice to manifest the feelings of perseverance, hard work, dedication, commitment, discipline, and so on. And there are a lot of animal imageries and plant imageries to work with here. If you look at each card very closely, you will see that the attention to detail is fabulous. And you can do your research about what that particular plant is, what that animal is, and and what symbology each particular jewelry or weapon holds. And I've noticed especially that the older religions such as Hinduism, Egyptian culture, Greek culture, so there are a lot of similarities between them. If you kind of scratch the surface and dig deeper, you will see a lot of symbolism between them. Like, for example, I'm just giving you, it's not related to the yogin, this example I'm just giving you as a fun fact. So Indra in Hinduism is the god of thunder and lightning, and he's considered to be the king of all the gods. And incidentally, Zeus, who is the king of all the gods in Greek mythology, his main weapon of choice is also lightning. So these are just a couple of things that you will see, you'll find similarities between these religions, or these cultures. So if you want to channel these cards, even if you are not a practicing Hindu, if you're not a practicing Buddhist, because the Yogini tradition and the Tantra tradition is also present in Buddhism, it's okay, you can do it. I love this card. This is just so gorgeous. This kind of reminds me of Gaia, which is once again the mother goddess in Greek literature. I just love this card so much. So yeah, you can find a lot of symbolism that is carried over from one culture to the next, and you can use that in your practice as well. But yes, this deck will take some work, because as I've been doing some research for the past couple of weeks, there isn't a lot of information available online. You will need to dig deeper, learn, or rather read the research papers that people have published. But I think it'll be totally worth it. And definitely, this is the last card. Yeah. And definitely do pick up this book. It is amazing. Has a lot of information. Yeah. All right. So we've come to the end of our walkthrough of the Yogini Oracle deck. It's a very chunky, meaty deck. As you can see, it's a pretty huge deck. And I definitely recommend this. It is different. It is chock full of symbolism. I think it can, it's multicultural, and it will definitely add something special to your practice. So thank you so much for continuing for so long, and I really appreciate your support. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Take care, everyone. Bye.